Did you know that watching content on TikTok could actually be deadly for you? No, I'm not trying to scare you or say that watching short form content makes you stupid. Although that's true too. What I'm trying to say is that the content you're watching might be created by someone who used to be a really dangerous criminal, or maybe even a murderer right now. José Jurado Montilla, who became known as the TikTok killer, was caught and arrested twice on charges related to 6 different murders. Montilla, who was born in 1961 and spent most of his life in the Spanish region of Malaga, was first arrested in the mid-1980s for the murder of 4 people in Malaga. He was sentenced to 123 years in prison, but was released after 28 years thanks to a successful appeal under Spanish sentencing law. And after he was released, about 10 years later, he created a TikTok account where he posted harmless videos about traveling around Spain and living a nomadic lifestyle. But soon after, users themselves started to notice that his facial expressions, gestures, and sudden mood swings were honestly unsettling and made people wonder why he seemed so creepy. In the end, all of this led to Montilla committing 2 more crimes after his release, and his TikTok account actually helped the police track him down. And how it all happened and where it all began, I'm gonna tell you right now. Make sure to watch the video until the end. There's a lot of interesting stuff at the end. 10 years after being released from prison, Montilla created a TikTok account under the nickname El Titi, or Dynamite, and gained popularity with his videos where he walked around Spain, proclaiming his innocence. However, it was his constant posts on TikTok that ultimately led the authorities to discover his whereabouts, suspecting him of committing 2 more murders. In 2024, Montilla was arrested in connection with the murder of a 21-year-old college student named David. David was shot on his family's farm in Malaga in August 2022, and according to Sir, before his death, he described Montilla to his father. A year later, Montilla joined 42-year-old Esther Estepe on her hike across Spain, but she went missing just a few days after they met at the end of August 2023. Estepe's remains were discovered later, in 2024, and evidence also linked Montilla to her death. He denies any involvement in the deaths of David or Estepe and is awaiting trial. The stories of Montilla's past crimes and how his TikTok led to his recent arrest are told in the Netflix documentary series, The TikTok Killer. You'll probably never even suspect when you're scrolling through TikTok that some of this content could be made by a former killer. Just imagine, his prison sentence was a whopping 123 years. Most likely, he would have died in that prison. But he got out after 28 years and went right back to killing. And now think about this. Not only are you watching TikTok, but so are your kids, for example. Do you realize just how much danger your child could be exposed to? They're really vulnerable. So why am I telling you all this? It's because you always need to stay alert, even when you're just watching short, seemingly harmless content. Because you never really know what's on the other side of the coin, or who's actually on the other side of the screen. You never know where danger might be lurking. Montilla's first known murder was shooting his neighbor, 57-year-old Francisco Gonzalez, on his farm. Initially, Montilla was not arrested, but he later confessed to killing Gonzalez. However, he insisted that Gonzalez approached him with a shotgun inside the house, so Montilla grabbed the weapon and shot him in self-defense. Before charges were brought against him, Montilla killed at least 3 more people: the driver Antonio Poniagua in March 1987, and a German and a British tourist in May 1987. He was arrested in the late 1980s and found guilty of all 4 murders, although he denied killing the last 3 people and insisted that he was being used as a scapegoat. Montilla was sentenced to 123 years in prison. "They blamed me for everything that happened in that part of the country," he said in a TikTok video that was shown in the film The TikTok Killer, "even though I had absolutely nothing to do with it." Montilla served 28 years in prison before his sentence was reviewed after an appeal under Spain's Parrot Doctrine. In 2006, the Supreme Court of Spain ruled in favor of this doctrine, allowing prisoners to be held longer than the then maximum term of 30 years, in accordance with the European Convention on Human Rights. In 2013, the European Court of Human Rights successfully overturned this doctrine, and Montilla was released. After getting out of prison, Montilla started a TikTok account called Dynamite Montilla, where he documented his travels in his later years. In addition to videos about his long-distance hikes across Spain, he also talked about his prison past and claimed he was innocent. According to the Netflix documentary, at the time of his arrest, he had about 3,000 followers on TikTok. In August 2022, Spanish authorities believe that Montilla shot his fifth victim, a 21-year-old student named David. Before his death, David allegedly told his father that he had met an older man who seemed very suspicious and wanted to go fox hunting, according to the local newspaper 20 Minutos, citing ANI. Although the case went quiet for several years, the story later became relevant again because another person, suspected of being one of Montilla's victims, claimed that he had met someone who offered to go fox hunting with him. It's really important to say that. Personally, I find all of this very, very suspicious. I don't want to blame David's father, but when your son comes up to you and says that, some stranger is messaging him and he wants to go fox hunting with him, isn't that suspicious? I mean, that's really suspicious. Yeah, maybe it would have crossed David's personal boundaries, considering he was already an adult. He was 21, but still, I think he should have been kept at home and told that he wasn't going anywhere that day. And if his father had looked at Montilla's photos or his short videos, I think he would have realized that this guy was pretty suspicious and dangerous. And the following year, after this disappearance, Esther Estepa goes missing. And who do you think was involved in that? That's right, you guessed it. The following year, Estepa went missing after she failed to contact her mother, with whom she usually spoke every day. Estepa disappeared while hiking along the Spanish coast and stopped in the city of Gandia to treat an injured leg at the end of August 2023. On August 23rd, Estepa's mother received several messages from her daughter via WhatsApp, but later told investigators that the writing seemed strange to her, and she thought the messages might have come from someone else. Although her family initially didn't know that Estepa was seeing Montilla, they met him after he reached out to him and expressed his concern about Estepa's whereabouts. Apparently, in response to Estepa's disappearance, Montilla retraced the same trails and roads they had supposedly walked just days before she went missing. He shared his journeys on TikTok, told Estepa's story to his followers, and said he hoped someone would report having seen her. Shortly after Estepa stopped messaging her family in August 2023, they learned about her friendship with Montilla. He called them several times and asked about the progress of the investigation, so her family later contacted the authorities and shared their suspicions. In the midst of the investigation into a possible connection between Montilla and Estepa, investigators received the results of the DNA analysis from David's crime scene. Police reportedly confirmed the presence of Montilla's DNA on David's backpack and began his arrest. Since Montilla was a nomad with no permanent address, authorities reviewed his TikTok videos to determine his whereabouts and arrested him at a sports bar near the Spanish-Portuguese border, according to Crime Spain. The director of the documentary, The TikTok Killer, Hector Muniz, later told Time that Montilla's content provided investigators with a rich archive of evidence. At first, when you dive into his content, you focus on what he's saying, looking for contradictions and lies. But after hours of watching raw footage, sorting through dozens of clips, rewatching and editing them, you start to develop a bit of an obsession, Muniz said. You start to notice the tiniest details, recurring patterns, his gestures, and almost without realizing it, you become a bit like a forensic psychologist. The director continued, "What I'll never forget is his ability to instantly switch emotions from one second to the next, blending sadness and joy, anger with charm. And all of this happens in a single video, without any cuts or mediation. It's like watching a display of what many would call psychopathy unfold in real time. In February 2024, Estepa's skull and bones were found near a highway in Gandia, according to El Paz. Although Montilla was already behind bars for David's murder, authorities searched his phone and found evidence that they say proves he committed sexual assault and killed Estepa. He maintains his innocence in both cases and is awaiting trial. Now, it's almost impossible to find Montilla's TikTok videos. Well, that's not surprising. His account has been deleted, and some videos show up in search results, like on Google. But when you click on the links, they turn out to be empty. I'm sure that a big company like TikTok can't afford to let a former killer gain traction on their platform. Maybe you'll be able to find some of the content he made, and then you'll understand what the director of the movie The TikTok Killer meant about his gestures, behavior, and patterns. But in this video, I also want to talk to you about Esther Estepa, against whom Montilla committed a truly terrible crime. Esther Estepa was living a nomadic lifestyle in Spain when a chance encounter allegedly led to her death. She was born and raised in Seville, Spain, but as an adult, she left home and traveled around the country. During her travels, Estepa kept in touch with her family, especially her mother, Josefa Pepa Perez. When, at the end of August 2023, Perez started receiving strange messages from her daughter, she suspected something was wrong. She tried calling Estepa, and when she didn't answer, Perez reported her missing. Around the same time, Perez and her family started getting calls from TikToker José Jurado Montilla, who claimed he had traveled with Estepa before she disappeared. He called the family several times, asking about the investigation, and at the same time was allegedly retracing his and Estepa's routes from the days before her disappearance, broadcasting them on social media. Estepa's family quickly became suspicious of Montilla, especially after they learned that he had previously served almost 30 years in prison for 4 murders in the 1980s. Estepa's disappearance and her family's fight for justice were told in the Netflix documentary The TikTok Killer. Maybe Jose thought it was a brilliant move to text the victim's family from her phone. But do you know where criminals most often slip up in situations like this? They don't even try to copy their victim's way of communicating, and so he ends up looking pretty suspicious when in reality it would only take a few minutes. He could have just checked her messages with her mom and copied her style of texting, and then maybe he wouldn't have been caught. But I really doubt that. And what do you think about the fact that he called the victim's family and asked about the progress of the investigation? That's just really stupid, you have to admit, especially considering the fact that everyone knows you've already been behind bars for quite a long time. Almost 30 years. Basically, Jose clearly wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, and he paid a high price for it. In August 2023, Estepa was traveling along the coast of Spain, staying at various shelters and hostels for women. Perez began to suspect that some had happened to her daughter when she started receiving strange messages from her. Perez received a WhatsApp message from someone claiming to be Estepa, who said that on August 23, 2023, she was staying with friends in Buenos Aires. "I don't have a job. I'm living on the street with 2 Argentinian friends," the messages said, according to the TikTok Killer. "I've lied to you many times. I don't have any money. My phone is dead. I'm gonna sell it. I love you very much, but I'm a bad daughter. I'm leaving Spain to start a new life in Buenos Aires. Take care of yourself, Ma." Perez immediately became worried because both the meaning and the wording of the messages were nothing like what Estepa would have written. When Perez tried to call Estepa, her phone went straight to voicemail and seemed to be turned off. She didn't have any friends there, Perez said in the documentary, referring to the messages that claimed Estepa was staying with friends in Argentina. That made me doubt that she was the one who wrote it. In addition to the strange messages, Perez also felt that something was wrong because Estepa had so many plans that we always ruled out the possibility that she disappeared voluntarily. What's more, we expected her to come home for Christmas, she told Article 14. Estepa's family contacted the authorities and officially reported her missing on August 26, 2023. Later, the police traced Estepa's last known whereabouts to Alicante and Gandia. Shortly after Perez reported her daughter missing, she started receiving calls from an elderly man who claimed he had been with her daughter in the days leading up to her disappearance. This man turned out to be a TikTok content creator, José Jurado Montilla, and he told Perez that he had met Estepa at a hostel in Alicante. We had reported her missing several weeks earlier, and suddenly a man called me and said he had run into my daughter by chance at a hostel in Alicante, Perez says in the documentary. He said he wanted me to know what he had already told the police. The last time he saw Esther was when he accompanied her to a medical center in Gandia because her legs were hurting badly. Montilla claimed that he and Estepa got along well because they were both nomads. He said they decided to go hiking together and headed to Gandia, but had to make a stop at the hospital on August 22, 2023. Montilla claimed that the last time he saw Estepa was when he dropped her off there. However, Perez and her family started investigating Montilla and discovered that he had previously served 28 years in prison for killing 4 people. Montilla was released in 2013 thanks to a successful appeal under the Spanish doctrine, and he created a popular TikTok account where he documented his travels and insisted on his innocence. Although Estepa's family reported their concerns about Montilla to the police, they had no solid evidence linking him to the crime. The Estepa case stalled for almost a year. In February 2024, tourists discovered a skull and other remains along a highway in Gandia, according to El País. Later, DNA analysis confirmed that the remains belonged to Estepa. Forensic experts also stated that she was murdered and died from a head injury caused by a blunt object. Realizing the connection to the suspect, the police had no trouble tracking down his whereabouts since he was posting updates from his current location in Val de Batallo in the province of Badajoz, just 5 kilometers from Portugal. The police acted quickly, and during an undercover operation, David's alleged killer was arrested on May 16th and appeared in court last Sunday, where he was denied bail. According to the officers who worked on the 2022 case, the motive for the murder was to take David's belongings. David was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. On that fateful August night, the loss of contact led his relatives to a picturesque spot where they thought the young man might be. The next day, while searching the area, they first found David's car. Later, their worst fears were confirmed when they found his body. As of this month, the suspect is in jail thanks to the creative and painstaking work of the National Police investigators. By the way, I highly recommend watching this film made by Netflix. There are only 2 episodes, each about an hour long, but they're very informative. It shows all the messages, videos from Montilla's TikTok, and much more. Estepa's mother also appears in the film, and she shares a lot of interesting details. So that's how an ordinary content creator on your favorite social network can turn out to be a real killer. Suspicious and dangerous. I'm sure you've never looked at short-form content from this perspective before, but maybe it's time to start thinking about it. And I strongly recommend that you stay alert, even when you're just doing something as simple as scrolling through TikTok. And of course, think 1,000 times before agreeing to meet up with a stranger from the internet. Ask yourself, why do I even need this? Well, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, look out for your friends and family, and don't give them a reason to worry about you. See you soon. Stay tuned.